Welcome to a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda.
Would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Need audio. Good morning and welcome to the November 17th meeting of the Lorain County Board of Commissioners. Thank you. Commissioner Lori has the dog for today. And he's taking her for a walk.
I have something for you. Look it. Can you sit? Can you sit? Good girl. Girl, boy, girl. Nice girl. Oh, she likes cookies. We
So do
have
I.
a boxer Brendel mix. Has a lot of energy. She would make somebody such a fun dog. Ken, I see you looking at her. I think you should come down on Saturday and pick her up at 3 o'clock. That's when she will be available at our dog pound. If you're not into boxers, we have other dogs for you to come and check out. It's a very inexpensive way to make your family very happy. We also give out right now currently a $50 certificate to get your pet spayed or neutered. So come on down to our dog pound and take home a pet, and let that be your first place to look for an animal if you're interested in a dog.
A thought for today: daily prayers will diminish your cares. I'm soliciting.
I'll second that motion.
Amen. Okay, Teresa has changed the rotation of our agenda today.
Uh-oh. You're gonna get me all messed up.
We're going to do budget hearings first.
She just did that to see if we were paying attention. Thank
that.
you, Commissioner Kalo, for calling it to my attention. So,
I'm here to help.
I can see that. So the first esteemed person on the agenda is, where is he?
Judge Walter, I see him.
I walked in with him. Oh, you're sitting in the back.
The Honorable Judge Walter.
Yeah, he's my favorite probate judge.
He's our only one.
Oh, you guys are so sharp this morning. My golly.
Hi.
Good morning, everybody.
Welcome.
I'm not sure if you've gotten our revised budget request. Is that yes, that's it. And we're asking for the same amount that we got last year. I believe it was $511,000, and so we will be $511,000.
$490.
Okay, $490.
Don't forget the $490.
Absolutely not. The Ohio Revised Code lists over 200 duties of the probate judge. In addition to these duties, my court has taken over all of the criminal non-support cases for the county, which is not a traditional job of the probate judge. On Wednesdays, today, I have a criminal docket that lasts all day long. Fortunately, it dovetails with Judge Ewers and Judge Rothgary's criminal days also, because we're all on the same floor, and therefore we keep all those criminal defense lawyers all on the same floor together. As part of that program, of me handling those cases in conjunction with the probation department, we've tried really hard to keep offenders out of our local jail, and we've put them in programs that are actually funded by the state, one of them being the Responsible Fatherhood Program. That allows us to work with these offenders who their offense is that they haven't paid their child support. Let me be clear on these types of offenders. I'd rather have them out in the community paying us than them in our jail eating our food and sleeping in our beds. But occasionally, some of them have to go to jail. Also, I've taken on the duty of trying civil and criminal jury trials for the General Division. This alleviates the need to call in a visiting judge. I've taken cases back from the Domestic Relations Division, which they have a conflict on. This also eliminates the need for them to get a judge from another county, which is a savings to both the county and the state. We've also taken on the duties of processing private adoptions. As long as I've been an attorney, Lorain County has never allowed private adoptions in the probate court, and we have our very first private adoption. And a private adoption is one that is arranged by an attorney. In February 2009, the court instituted a mediation program. The program is paid for out of a fee that is charged on all of our filings and all of our cases. We were able to put this mediation program together without any general fund monies, and so it's fully funded by fees that people pay that come to the counter. I'm sure that the commissioners are well aware of what mediation is used for, and we use it on those kinds of cases in which it's better to have somebody else besides myself mediate the case. I and my magistrate, Myron Harkis, mediate the great majority of our cases in which there's disputes, but occasionally we have cases that would be imprudent for me to be the mediator when I have to be the final decision maker on a case, for them to present the case to me through mediation and then have to come back and try the case if the mediation was unsuccessful would not be a good way to conduct business. And once again, we've done that all without any general fund monies. As far as equipment, we have done a lot of things with equipment and trying to save money. I'll just give you one for instance. We need a new copier for the marriage license department. Our old copier was 14 years old. Got 14 years of good use out of that copier, but it was old and it kept jamming and it didn't fill the purpose anymore. So I asked my person to come up with find a copier that would fit the needs of the marriage license department. She came up with one. It was $3,000. I went to sign my name. I got the James out, and I looked and I said, gosh, I wonder if this is really the best we can do. It seems like there's a lot of things on this copier that I'm not sure that we actually need. And first thing I thought of was my wife. My wife, and most of the people in this room know my wife. She used to do that stuff for my office, and made sure that she actually could squeeze blood out of a turnip. And so I went back, and with the help of Tim Luby, and Mr. Luby came, and I think he made his presentation last week, but with his help, and me meeting with the people in the marriage license department and saying, what do you really need? And you know what it turns out that they needed in their copier? Something that makes copies. They didn't need these new copiers, duplex, they collate, they staple, they 3-hole punch, they'll get you some tea in the morning, they'll read you your horoscope if you ask them. This copy machine copies. That's all it does, and that's all they needed to do. And we got it for $995. We saved $2,000. Additionally, I noticed that the contract that they wanted us to, that was presented to us, was 2.4 cents per copy with a minimum number of, there was a minimum number of clicks or copies that they were going to charge us for. I looked at that. We renegotiated that down to 0.8 cents per copy, 1/3 of the original cost with no minimum clicks. That's a savings of probably on and on $75 a month. We've made those same, and I point that out as just one thing. We've made those same kinds of decisions with respect to a lot of our equipment. We've gone to centralized printing. We've done away with desktop printers for our clerks. This saves in consumables, repairs, and maintenance for having lots of printers instead of having one printer. We've also done away with expensive long-term leases, and we've opted to purchase our equipment. And we felt that that is much more economical in the long run. And we constantly make decisions on all of our equipment, whether we're going to fix, repair, or buy new stuff. Most of the computer equipment these days is kind of inexpensive, but we still make those decisions, and we just had to make the decision on our printer. We fixed our printer, and we were able to do so at a pretty reasonable rate. Currently, I serve in the only courtroom in the entire courthouse that does not have the technological upgrades for presenting a trial in the 21st century. There's 10 courtrooms across the street, or is there 11 courtrooms across the street. And 10 of them have technological upgrades. One does not, the probate court. We've put off, we didn't ask for monies for this year to, even though I've been in discussions with the commissioner's office in getting those technological upgrades, but I just said, listen, if we have to, we'll just continue to try cases the old-fashioned way. If people have to put boards up and write on them like they did back in the Clarence Darrow days, then that's the way they'll do it. We do have some upgrades, though, and that it's pretty good as compared to other courtrooms, is that we use a high-tech recording system, which I'll come back to in just a bit. As far as upgrading the courtroom, I hope that someday that those funds are available, because I believe that the citizens of Lorain County deserve the same kind of trial that they can get in one courtroom should be the same kind of trial they can get in another courtroom. Last year, I did have a case. It was this year. I did have a case in which I did need to use a courtroom that was high tech, and I believe it was Judge Ewers just allowed me to use his courtroom for one day. So, I mean, that's a short-term fix. That doesn't work if he's using his courtroom and I'm not. But we were able to get by that by using his equipment in his courtroom. As far as benefits, certain benefits that the employees would have had when I took over as the sole probate judge. As you know, November 29th of last year is when I became the sole probate judge. We switched from a family court to back to a probate court. We did away with morning and afternoon breaks. That's one of the things that I thought was not a good use of our resources, and we absorbed that back into the probate court. As you know, the court was a family court for 8 months last year. For those 8 months, I did without a bailiff, court reporter, or a third magistrate that the other domestic relations judges enjoyed. Overall, in 2009, I believe that saved the county well over $170,000. I still operate without a bailiff or a court reporter. The only judge in Lorain County without a bailiff. But I have a court administrator and a secretary who double as those and fill in those duties for the court. Once again, we use the recording system that's worked fabulously. And as you know, I use your office. The computers in the courtroom are owned by the commissioners. And so therefore, when we have a recording, I get the recording from your IT folks. And I tell you what, it absolutely has worked fabulously, because when the attorneys want something that has happened in the courtroom, instead of them having to go to a court reporter and get it typed up, which might cost hundreds of dollars, they are presented with a disc, a CD that costs about 10 cents. We don't charge them for it, but it's about a dime. They can do anything they want with it. They can take that to a court reporter and have them take it to a court reporter and have it typed up themselves. They can give it to their secretary and maybe have parts of it typed up for some use later on in a proceeding. They can listen to it themselves. I think the great majority of them just listen to them because they want to recollect what happened during the hearing, or they could use it as a coaster for their morning beverage if they so choose. So whatever they decide to use it for. We've done a lot of things with costs and postage. One of the things about we're allocated a certain amount for postage, and currently we're returning about 46% of our postage back to the Commissioner's General Fund. We were allocated $12,874, and we estimate that that's about $5,916 will be returned, 46% return on postage. And I'll get back to why we're doing so well on costs in just a minute, and all the monies were returned to the general fund. In 2009, we received $524,891 from the general fund, and we returned $160,747 to the general fund. That was a 30.6% return on the monies that we got. This year, we received $511,490 from the general fund, and we project that we will return $178,934. That's 35%. That's up 4.4% of monies that we're returning to the general fund. So from 2009 to 2010, we were cut $13,000, yet in the same time period, we're going to return $18,000 more to the general fund. A 31% net increase to the general fund just on costs, and that doesn't include the postage that I just talked about. And one of the reasons why is that we raised our deposit structure for the court. And that's the amount that somebody comes in and pays to the court when they first file a case. When they file a case, it used to be, and I forget the exact number. I mean, we have a complex deposit structure because we have so many different types of proceedings. It's not like maybe in general division where they have a few different, where they call one a civil case and maybe something else a foreclosure and maybe a criminal. We have, guardianships, adoptions, estates with full administration, estates without full administration, name changes, and I could go on and on of the different proceedings. So we have a specific deposit that we have instituted for each one of those. And we went through a lot of analysis to try to get to the right amount. And we had to make a decision whether we were going to be a bank or a collection agency. We were a collection agency for a while, and being a collection agency is very time consuming in labor, materials, and postage. We were sending out a lot of mailings, and we weren't getting a lot of returns. Of course, if there's an attorney representing the case, usually they would send us the money. If there's not, if somebody's pro se, then sometimes we don't ever get the money. Well, if we get the money up front, then we have it at the end, then the only thing we have to do is return a check to them at the end of the case. We think that this is one of the things that has directly led to the increase in the monies flowing back into the general fund. As far as fees, we have shifted certain costs into dedicated funds. I don't know if we talked about that last year, that certain employees we have an employee in the computerization fund, one in the indigent guardianship fund. We created a separate fund to fund our volunteer guardianship program. We could not operate without the outside services of the Lorain County Volunteer Guardianship Program, which is operated through Lutheran Ministries. And traditionally, the court gave them $25,000 every year to operate the Volunteer Guardianship Program. The program cost $100,000, so we're getting a 4-to-1 return bang for our buck. We could not operate without all the volunteer guardians that provide volunteer guardianship services to the court. So, but we saw that over the long term it was not sustainable, so we created a separate fund and charge a separate fee on our cases, and the monies that go into that fund directly fund the volunteer guardianship program. Through negotiations with our software vendor, We were able to negotiate a 50% savings on our annual database fee for the next 4 years. That translates into a $20,000 savings for us for over 4 years. And I did it for was able to do it for no other reason is say, look what bad shape we're in here in Lorain County, and say, listen, you need to come with a sharpened pencil if you're gonna negotiate with us, because there are a lot of vendors out there who would love to have our business. The fact remains is that we have our software in place, and it would be very costly to bring in a whole new vendor and do a lot of training, but they were still willing to step up to the plate and provide us with about, it increases year by year. It's a little over $20,000, like I said, beginning in 2010 and ending December 31st, 2013. Even though I have a very highly trained and experienced staff, they, for the third year, are going to go without any type of raise. And although they're very thankful that they have a job, and I believe that we have a great working environment over there, the fact remains is that all these people that work for probate court, like all the rest of the people who work for the county, they still have families to raise and support. 60%, it's over 60% of the people who work in my office are single women who support themselves and their own families. Some are raising their own, are primary caregivers for minor children or their minor grandchildren. And I just have to remain cognizant of that, is that these people, they work hard. I don't give them anything. They earn what they get. They earn what they get paid. They don't get anything. So one of the things that we're working on right now, and I have talked with I believe Mr. Cortez about this before, and I've talked with the treasurer also, is that at any one time the court is holding a substantial amount of money that is, for lack of a better reason, is the float of the money that's coming in, the money that's going out, and no matter what, we always have a certain sum of money. But we're looking for ways to try to get that out of the kind of investment that it is now. I mean, it's like $75,000, and I looked at the return on that was $101. But we have certain statutory limitations on what we could do with that money. And it's like that's less than 1% return. Less than, I mean, way less than 1%.
We feel your pain, Jim.
What's that?
We feel your pain.
Yes, but it, and the thing is that money, just kind of sits there, and all that money flows back into the general fund. If I could get it, at a market rate, then maybe it'd be $1,000. I don't know.
Nice?
Yes, and then that's just something more. It doesn't benefit the probate court, but what benefits the general fund benefits the probate court. This is kind of on the, I don't know if you want to call this the ridiculous end, but as far as what we've done to save costs is that I have become OCD about making sure that our lights shut off when we're not there.
Oh, thank you.
There was nothing that was more disconcerting to me is that to come by the courthouse at 7 o'clock at night, and because I come in a lot on the weekends and I come in a lot in the evenings to try to get work done, and to see the lights ablaze, or just to drive downtown Elyria and see the south end of the sixth floor ablaze. So we've worked with the maintenance staff. I worked with Dennis Shaver, and we've fixed that problem. The last person out the door knows that they have to shut the lights off. The maintenance people turn them back on and then turn them off when they leave. We've recently developed a lighting scheme for my courtroom. My courtroom must have as many lights in here as this room here. It has no windows in it whatsoever. So you have to have at least some light on in there, or you'll run into things because it's pitch black in there. But in order to keep those lights off during the daytime, it's just a waste to have the lights on all the time. It's been a year and a half or 2 years now since the cut back on the maintenance, and my office still continues to provide, does the cleaning on Friday. When it's Friday afternoon, I hear the vacuum cleaner running out in the probate court, and they come into my office, and we do all the things necessary to keep our offices clean with the augmentation, the things that the maintenance staff does do. Finally, the Lorain County Probate Court has absorbed all the previous cuts that the the commissioners have imposed on us. There's currently no backlog of cases or filings. We are on time every time in probate court. I think part of the efficiency that we've felt, or the increase, is due to computerization, and I think that's still the way of the future. I have a computer in my office. I have a computer out in my courtroom. I do even have a printer out in my courtroom where I don't have to run back and forth. If I need to print something for a trial that I'm in, I just print it right out there and have it ready. We have a document imaging system that allows me I can see every single case filing from my desk. So that's why I'm getting fat, because I'm sitting in my chair all day long and don't get any exercise going looking for files. We're prepared to accept the funding levels at the 2010 level for 2011. We've made some contingency plans if there were some modest cuts to our budget. We are open to any suggestions and any ideas on how we can improve our efficiency. I've talked with Mr. Cortez and a couple of the commissioners about some, things that down the road that aren't really best discussed out in the open forum, of how we can save costs over the long run. And finally, if I didn't have enough duties already, back in June, the legislature passed a substitute amended bill, Senate Bill 110, and Governor Strickland signed it into law September 17th, which created the Sewage Treatment Appeals Board. And now I am charged with coming up with a set of rules to ensure due process for the Sewage Treatment Appeals Board and appoint somebody to that position. So if anyone's interested in becoming a member of the Sewage Treatment Appeals Board, we're taking resumes, and despite what you think, it really is not a crappy job. So I am prepared to answer any questions if anyone has anything. And I see that I may have gone way over my time.
You did.
So.
You did.
But Your Honor, I'm impressed, and you were entertaining. Madam Commissioner?
I don't really have a question. It's more of a comment. First of all, thank you very much for all that you've done to try to cut costs and do your part to help out in these tough times. Next year is not our issue, because we banked half the sales tax for next year. So next year is not the problem. It's 2012, where we would have to cut about $6 million in 2012. But in order to ease the burden for 2012, if we don't impose a sales tax, we will have to cut $3 million for next year. So that could very well mean a 10% salary cut across the board for all departments. That would be, looking at your budget, would that be about $45,000 salary cut for you? That's with PERS and I think workman's comp.
I think it'll be a 10% cut regardless. It won't be salary. It'll be a 10% cut to the department, and he'll have to figure out where to get that from. Is that not correct?
It can be either, depending
Okay.
on how you look at it.
But it will be his obligation to figure it out.
Most of the costs associated with other accounts
Are set.
are committed
Yeah.
and fairly set for what we have to pay. There's not a lot of discretionary spending in that money, so usually it ends up pushing up against the salary accounts at the end of the day anyway. So while it's correct, it still goes back to where Commissioner Kokoski was at, so it's easier to look at the salary numbers.
Right. My thought is, if you're returning $178,000 to the general fund because you have made all these contingencies, that $45,000 or so may not affect you as much as it may other departments. But I'm going to ask everybody, that comes up here today, if we were to cut the 10% salary, how is that going to impact your department?
Well, of course, $45,000 is about 1.5 of the salaries of my typical clerk. So all I can say is that it's hard for me to speculate and make personnel decisions based upon what might happen I mean, what has to happen is, I'm given a budget, and then I have to say, hey, listen, how am I gonna make this work? And
Well,
that's
like
what
you've
we've
made
done.
other changes within, your copying, the various things that you spoke about earlier that would offset the salary cuts that you would get, and you could take from, different line items to keep your people
Well,
working.
believe me, we already
hopefully.
take from different line items to keep our salaries, of the salary fund afloat. But that's one of the first things we do after the first of the year is to make adjustments in that, because that is the great majority. Some of those monies do have to be moved around to make the salaries work. And then we work with other funds of the court to pay, supplies. We do have a computerization, and unlike like the general division is broken into the court and then the clerk, whereas in the probate court, I am the ex officio clerk of court. I am the clerk of court for my own court. So it's all one operation. So the computerization fund is under my control. It's not something that's split or talked about. I don't have to go and talk to somebody else, but
You talk to yourself.
I do that anyway. So
A $3 million cut for next year is a little bit easier to handle than a $6 million cut in 2012. So that's just my thinking. I do want to hear from all the elected officials how you feel that could possibly impact your department.
well, if we would have to go back and look at the numbers. I know that we can make it, and part of the contingency plan that we have made was to accept a modest cut. We could do that if there is a modest cut from the commissioners. But I don't know what that is, because our monies come in and we are extrapolating out into the future on how much monies are going to come in on certain accounts. So, I mean, if that requires somebody being laid off, or if some other kind of restructuring, I don't know, because we have done a lot of restructuring.
Yes, it sounds like
And
you have.
we have funds that used to, like the computerization fund, that used to grow year by year by year by year by year and get bigger and bigger. Well, that's not the case anymore, because we are paying, we not only have to pay our computerization funds for all of our licensing, maintenance fees out of our computerization, we also are paying our IT guy out of that fund. And so we're either running at keeping level, or we're running at a slight deficit in that fund. And the same thing was happening with our indigent guardian fund. So we have to take our indigent, the person who does guardianships for the court, and placed her into that fund. And over the long term, we saw that was not sustainable. So we've had to move some monies around to try to keep the fund afloat, because it's such an important fund. I mean, we do a lot of guardianships. The great majority of the guardianships are guardianships that that people can pay for them, but they pay in those guardianships, they pay a fee that goes into the indigent guardianships. And the indigent guardian fund is for those people, of course, who cannot pay for attorney services, filing fees for the guardianships that come before the court. So, I mean, my theory is that there aren't any sacred cows, that everything is available to the court to discuss with you folks. I mean, we look at this as a partnership with the commissioners of trying to come up with the best solution. It was easy a few years ago when we were riding high, but now is the time where we need to, hunker down. And like I said, I've used some of my wife's skills, management
Getting that
skills.
blood out of the
saying,
turnip?
listen, if we got some turnips, we're squeezing some blood out of. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if Lisa could answer this, or Mr. Cortez. $22 million is our salaries.
Correct.
But when you add in the PERS and workman's comp, does that bring us to about 30 million?
No,
No.
it wouldn't be quite that much. But it does raise the figure. PRS runs about 10%.
So that's why when I said 10% salary line item cut would get us close to the 3 million that we need to save.
We came up with a ballpark figure because obviously we couldn't tell where the reductions would come if there was additional cuts. It doesn't always transfer into further layoffs. It depends on where the cuts are absorbed. So we figured that a 10% cut may cause a reduction of 6 to 7% in personnel. Did some adjustments to the numbers with regard to benefits and wages, and made some assumptions. Now, they're not predicated on scientific fact. We wouldn't have that until after the board's decision to see the overall effect of how those reductions were producing results. And obviously, in the first several months of the year, you don't see much of anything in that shifting. Because the trailing cost, we came up with about $2.5, $2.6 million potential with regard to your request on preparing for 2012.
My turn. Appreciate it, Judge. And I appreciate Commissioner Koski with the statements about trying to save the 10% if we don't go forward with imposing a sales tax or generating additional revenue. I just don't know with the 10% across the board how that is going to affect services. The judges, some departments have the ability to raise some fees or work out of different accounts, but the Court of Common Pleas has already asked for $1.1 million more in additional money. So I don't know how we make up that difference under what the court ability is to implement their own budget. Also, when it comes to departments like the sheriff and the jail, where we're going to take an additional 10% when you say across the board again, is how we're going to actually pay that going forward and provide the services. I don't know if the sheriff can absorb another 10%. Prosecutors also will be presenting also. I know they ran short-staffed and 4-day work weeks. So, I mean, 10% across the board I think is kind of a broad stroke. And I would have to really look at that to agree upon doing 10%. I mean, our job as elected officials is to have a proper budget to operate county government, so, and we're having the sales tax hearings coming up, so.
Well, to say that I'm not obsessive about the budget, when November 1st comes or when December 1st comes, my court administrator knows I'm going to be standing in front of her desk saying, where are the figures from the previous month? What did, what came in? And I continually look at those numbers and try to track those and see if I can find any trends over the long time. Fortunately for what we do in probate court, as long as they make people, we will be in business. So, and people will still continue to come through our front door. But we are serving an ever greater array of people who are indigent. The mental health aspect, that the commitments that we do, we're going to see more of those. So these are the times when those are going to increase. When times are difficult, more and more resources of the court, the prosecutor, and the sheriff are in need for those people. And the courts and the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's department becomes the front line for mental health in a lot of situations. So we're going to try to hold the line on with what we have, and if we have to absorb some cuts, then we'll take a look on how we're going to do that. And once again, there are no sacred cows, and if I have to be out front accepting marriage license applications, I'll be out front accepting marriage license applications. But whatever it takes to get the job done, we'll do it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Judge Walther. I think you've done an excellent job. We appreciate all that you've done to enhance the operations of your probate department, my favorite probate judge.
Thank you.
Well, one of you is my favorite commissioner, too. So,
We won't tell Ted which one of us it is.
all
Okay,
right, thank you.
Thanks. Next is the Clerk of Courts, Ron Nebakowski.
Isn't he your favorite clerk of courts?
Your favorite clerk of courts?
I guess.
Thank you. This new one?
Ladies and gentlemen, well, we'll give you a report on things that we've done since the last time we got together. We have canceled an Accurant LexisNexis contract, saved $600 a year. Oh, it's $600 over the next 2 years. You've got a written, I think you've got a package there. Should include all this stuff. We renegotiated the CASNet contract. That's for digitizers and things to save $265 approximately over the next 2 years. We negotiated our case management contract with the GBS Corporation to save approximately $5,000 over the next year. We negotiated our contract with MT Business Technologies, that's the printers and copiers people, with a savings of about $14,530 over 2010, 2011. We negotiated the Simplex Grinnell, that's a time clock contract, with a savings of $360 for the next 2 years. We went into, I think you're aware of, the getting rid of Waltz mailers, a very expensive way that we inform people of they were being sued, with the savings of about $8,000 a year. That's part of the Pitney Bowes Send Suite, which is still in process of clearing the bureaucracy, is what we're doing here. That will save about $30,000 over the next 2 years. So altogether, those savings, mostly renegotiations and cancellation of contracts, is about $58,755. We entered into a contract with RBC Collections. We formed the collection department to my 3rd year, I think. I remember talking to you folks about it, some of you. And we do a really good job, I think, but we're not done. We are working on early days of changing the process by which people pay us or how they collect. We collect a lot of it, but we don't collect all of it. There are some people getting blood from a turnip is very difficult. So we've turned that getting blood from turnips over to RBC Collections, which is a collection company, which doesn't cost us any money. They add 25%. They can add up to 30%. We negotiated that down to 25% to take care of the folks that they have to collect from. So far, we've only collected $600, but I think that's about 2 months. So that would be 3 times 24 for the next 2 years, I would imagine. Investment policy, I sympathize certainly with Judge Walther. We take money on deposit also, so that we're more of a bank than we are a collection agency, although we're quite a collection agency too. And we have some $3 million invested. We told you we would get $22,000, I think, in the official estimate of certificate. We'll get about $33,000. We've gone from putting all of our money with local banks into federal agencies, as Dan Tellerick does. So that's about $11,000 this year. And over the next 2 years, I'm not sure. Right now, the banks are offering 18 basis points, which is 0.18%, less than 1%. Less than 0.25%, in fact. We have, we cut back. We've got, where was it? 35 employees, I think, and we had 44 in 2005, the last normal year that we had. So we've been reducing our staff all along. We're down to cases per employee. In 2005, we were doing 268. We're now at something over 500 cases per employee. And part of that is we've closed our office we don't open to the public till 10 o'clock, which irritates a lot of attorneys. But it's something we had to do to get the work done because it was just piling up. Foreclosures, I hate to tell you. Well, last year, 2009, we set the record for foreclosures, up 10% from the previous year. This year, it looked like we were going to be down 6 or 7% early in the year, but they've just started coming again recently. I think some of the banks stopped their moratoria. They had a moratorium for a while. They weren't pursuing these things. They weren't forgiving them, weren't forgetting them. They weren't doing much about them, but they weren't sending them to us. But they've started sending them to us again. So we're getting overwhelmed with foreclosure cases. That's more. We have transferred from the title fund last October. We transferred $250,000, which is part of a treasury, which is part of a fee increase, and it's also passport sales, which we do at all of our offices, and limited authority deputy registrar. I would ask you guys to be very vocal and trying to get help for. I think the clerks are going to move next year. I should be the deputy registrar for this county. There are 5 deputy registrars in the county. They're a private operation. They're a monopoly operation. They have a 5-mile, pretty much protected territory. They don't buy much of their equipment. Most of it's provided by the states. They don't make very management decisions because the state micromanages that whole process to the tune of about $15 million a year. They have 70-some people that travel around to all these deputy registrar places where you get your license plates and your driver's licenses. People think I do that. I mean, I get calls all the time from people who think we do that. We should do that, but we don't do that. If we did do that, Mr. Burkhardt and I did a study, and we calculated we could turn over $700,000 more a year to you, which would probably help your general fund. And now that money's going to private enterprises who are doing what? You know, the history of it is, in the early part of the 20th century, the governor appointed Democrats or Republicans, depending upon his party, who would be the deputy registrars. They make a lot of money and they kick back money to the party. For years, the parties existed mostly on that money. That stopped in the 60s and 70s in an evolutionary process. Finally came to an end with Governor Celeste. And now, those people are not allowed to even, I think they're allowed to contribute $100 to the governor, but that's also. So that part of it's gone, but still there's something going on because there are several people who are deputy registrars for several places around the county. And what happens is we confuse people. People come to us, we send them to them. If they're an out-of-state car that has to be registered and how they come to us, we send them to them, they have to send them back to us. It's a mess. In Wellington, Ohio, it's a very nice man that's a deputy registrar there, I like him. We tried to work a deal where we would do titles there. He does titles there, but he brings them to us. He charges people 25, we get 15. He gets the 10. If the clerks would become the deputy registrars, we would no longer confuse people, and no one would have to pay $25 for a $15 title.
How do we get you to be the deputy?
Well, we have to change the law. So we're pushing for a law. We're pushing for a law change, and we like the Commissioners Association to push it to help us, because it would mean significant bucks for the general fund.
It's been talked about, Ron, at the state level. You
Good.
know that. It's just
I've been working
it
on
hasn't
it.
gone forward.
Yeah, I've been working on it for 2 years, and
Right.
it's just it's a frustrating thing, but you know, it's something that should be done. It's one few case where, you know, actually it's a public job. It's not a private job. They've made it a private job, and they've done it very inefficiently. Okay. I'd like to recommend, I'm not sure how we do this, Al Moran, who's a good friend of mine, who's a public relations guy for Cuyahoga Community College, I think, it's 3 Cs. Has said he would be happy to work on a committee maybe with Marcia at Lorain Community College. I think we should have a major Buy Lorain County program here. We don't have one. It kind of irritates me. People don't know. You know, at 10%, you get nasty phone calls and letters from 1 out of 10 of the people out there that pay attention to this stuff. Most people don't really know what's going on. I don't think they really think about it when they go across the county line to buy stuff. I think we should have a major program there. I'm sure the Chamber of Commerce, I see him in the room, would help with that. It's something we should
To get
do.
people from Cuyahoga County to cross the border and buy in Lorain County, or just keeping
Just trying to get
our
people
people
here.
here?
Stay here.
How about
Yeah.
vice versa?
A lot of-
Let's go both ways.
A good
Let me
piece of
see.
your general fund that you get from me comes from, I sell titles in Cuyahoga County. I work hard. I put that office near Cuyahoga County, and we do a lot of title work, and that's money coming to Lorain County that would be going somewhere else. So, you know, there are things that we can do here.
Ron, for a second, I just want to capitalize upon a comment that you made. Lorain County, on the last sets of reports that came out just a few years ago, is what they call a donor county. You have donor counties and you have recipient counties. Erie County is a recipient county. That is, for every potential $1 of spending that goes on in Erie County, possible discretionary spending, they actually generate about $1.35. In Lorain County, we generate about 87 cents. So 13 to 14% of spending power is leaving the county on a regular basis, so we're a donor county when it comes to that. And we need to get closer to being par or become a recipient county. Cuyahoga's recipient, Erie's recipient, and right in between them is Lorain, and we're the donor.
Well, how
I very
can
much
they
agree.
be recipients if we're not donors?
We are donating to their county.
We're getting 86, 87 cents, as Jim says, on the dollar sales tax paid by people in Lorain County. I have been working, you know, we're working on a project in Lorain trying to bring back the Spitzer Hotel. We think we can do some travel and tourism stuff there. We can bring people from out of the state. I think that's part of the thing. The Visitors Bureau, we started that when I was a county commissioner. We started it for the express purpose of cleaning up Lorain's Lorain County's reputation a little bit, which was pretty seedy back then, but also pointing out that there are a lot of great stuff here. And I think the Visitors Bureau does a good job. They brought a lot of money into the county, and some of it makes its way into your coffers through the sales tax. So I just think those are pretty important things that we could do. A great conservative philosopher, writer, Gilbert Keith Chesterton in the 18th century said, when there's a shortage of hats, sensible men do not go about lopping off heads. They start making more hats. And so I suggest that we could all work on making more hats. Any questions?
My first question, I'm looking at this year's budget and your request for next year's budget, and you're asking for $465,000 more next year than this year.
Well, I don't know this. I've always hated this process that the state uses. Steve told me we had a continuation budget, so I'm not aware of anything that we're asking. Well, we do get $200,000 from the judges. The judges raised the foreclosure fee, which
Right.
helped us to keep our heads above water.
Well,
So
my concern is, we're talking about cutting possibly 10% across the board for salaries, and not on your proposed budget, but on the budget that you have for this year. And then I'm also, my budget director, I asked her yesterday, and she said you have about $606,000 cash presently, and you make about $52,000 a month. So I don't know if that included November's or not, but possibly another $52,000 for December. And is that money that's going to come back to the general fund?
you're going to get, this year you get $200,000 of it in December. Yeah.
And then what do you do with
Thank
the
you,
extra,
Ron.
the extra 400,000 then that's
It's
sitting in
carryover, and we
cash?
work it out, and we will continue to work it out whenever you guys want to sit down and talk. The legislature says we have to get together and talk about that. But we've been earning more money and finding more ways to bring money into the passports, bring money in, deputy registrar brings money in. I'd love to have that 700 grand for you. We just, we never know. There's always workers' comp bills out there, PERS bills out there, so I'm sure that 600 cash is not clear.
Well, no,
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah,
is
it's not
clear. And,
Last time I was less than 500, and that wasn't clear, so there's still bills coming out, paid out of there.
well, we got an average revenue about 137 and average expense about 85. So you have a net gain of 52,000.
I'm sorry, try that last.
I said, you have an average revenue of 137,000
Yeah.
and average expense of 85,000. So you could possibly have at least another 52,000 on top of that 606.
Well, we have some money for you. If you get real pressed, we can probably squeeze it a little harder. I'm giving you money that I know I can live without, and I'll continue to do that until there's a terrible day of reckoning, and then we'll look at it.
Well,
and I-
I'm going to ask you the same question I asked.
Again, because we're going out of our way to earn extra money for the general fund. And I've never had a commissioner or anybody else say, hey, thanks.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks. I'm going to say thanks right
Well,
now.
actually,
I
Betty
mean,
has. She's
we're
thanked me
all-
twice.
I mean, we need to do what we need to do to get through these tough times, and I'm glad you're doing
We've
what you
worked on
can
that.
do.
I would think maybe a revenue committee to look at everything that everybody does in the county and see if there are other ways that other people can bring more money in.
Right. We
I'm
have
not-
two choices. We either raise revenue or cut expenses, and we need to cut $3 million next year.
Well, or raise revenues.
Or raise the
$3
revenue.
million.
A combination of
Yeah.
both would
I think
not
it's a
be out of
combination.
order.
And it's more than just taxes. There are other things involved.
Well, if
so-
there's other things other than taxes, I'm all ears, because the voters, and I'm not just talking about the voters rejecting the sales tax the last 2 times. I'm also talking about the taxes that they've rejected in their cities, in the city of Lorain and the city of Elyria. And those types of rejections are so close to them. I mean, it's their police, it's their fire, it's their streets, it's their parks. I think that would be more important to people than what we do here in the county. A lot of people don't even know what we do in the county. And so that's my concern. The voters have spoken not only to us, but to the cities, and they're saying do with less.
We lost. We lost. I know that's. I was commissioner once, and we went out there was no sales tax when I was here. We tried real hard. We talked about it, and we should have had a sales tax. If people had understood it, we would have had it. So again, the problem is, and you guys ran a good campaign last time, I'm not knocking it, but you have to keep trying. And if you get to the people, besides the angry old men who just vote no because that's the only place they can say no. They say, they hate governments, they're going to say no, and they say no to you. And they say no to a school district. And these are the things that are really, in the long run, are really important to the country.
There is a difference in the kind of tax that was asked for, in my opinion, in the cities, those are income taxes.
Right. They're
And
big, they're
what-
payroll taxes,
what
not
we're
income tax, they're
talking-
payroll
And
tax.
what we're talking about is a sales tax. And if you talk about a 1/4% sales tax, that's 1/4 of a penny. There sure is a lot of difference between that and something that comes directly out of your income tax.
A very
out
big
of your
difference.
Payroll each week or every other 2 weeks. Any other comments, Ron?
Well, there's going to be a bill in the legislature next year to raise court costs. I would plead with you to support that bill with your association, because the court costs do not cover. If we collected every single penny, we're not going to cover the cost of running the courts.
Even with the new administration coming in and the new House, that's still gonna be pushed forward by
I'm
your
sure it will be,
association?
yes, because this is a bipartisan, this is not a partisan issue.
Right.
Court costs, I think if you're looking at the conservative viewpoint, I think conservatives want the courts to pay for themselves as much as possible, and they're not paying for themselves now. So, you know, the court costs have to be somewhat higher, and they haven't been raised for a long time in general. So.
Probably direct this at Sally. Your budget was back from May with your increases. Can you give us a revised budget based on some of the discussion up here, a freeze, or if there is cost savings after that?
We still have 5 people laid off.
Yeah, we still have people laid off, and the hours. You know, another thing you might consider is 4 10 days. It just close the courthouse. That's the judges that have to make that decision, I guess. I see Tim in the back. But, you know, make it 4 days, and we could save a lot of electricity and everything else in that 5th day.
Absolutely.
Judge Walter?
And an energy audit, there's an awful lot of lights in here that I'm not sure.
They're energy efficient lights,
I don't
though.
need, huh?
They're energy
They're
efficient lights.
inefficient, but there's still a lot of them.
We could operate in the
Also,
dark.
based on the fact that we may not be able to receive any money from the judges next year in the general division, they've been generous to us the last year and a half by helping us out with foreclosure funds, but we don't know how long that's gonna last, so that's why this is more than we expect.
Okay, any other
We're all done.
comments?
Good luck.
Thank you.
We need it, thank you.
Commissioners?
No.
All right. Thank you again. 10:05, prosecutor.
Run a
4D,
little late.
Dennis Will. Good morning, Dennis Will, 4D. You're on twice. You can roll over as you choose. You've got the microphone. Your choice.
Okay, good morning.
Morning.
I see that you broke it down, our request and our proposal under 4D and under our regular budget. I'm going to address them all at one time, and then if you have specific questions on them, we'll go into that. Specifically, your request was through the Budget Department to have us identify for you what cost-saving measures we have put into effect because of the difficulties in the county finances. Since the cutbacks that took place in January of 2009, what we did to deal with that in 2009, as you're well aware, is we reduced our work hours across the board in our office. For a substantial portion of the year, we were down 12 hours for every 2-week pay period, which is roughly a 15% reduction. And we did that for a number of months. We were able to eventually reduce that down to only 8 hours because we went after some federal stimulus money, and we received that in conjunction with the Sheriff's Department, so that allowed us to go down to a 10% cut. In addition to that, in addition to reducing our work hours, 3 attorneys were voluntarily reduced in salary by approximately $84,000, which saved us a substantial sum there. And then everybody else bit the bullet, including me, so that we were down anywhere from 13 to 15% in our pay. That carried over into last year. We were able to go back to a full work week. In order to accomplish that, we didn't replace 3 individuals that we lost from our staff, 1 prosecutor, 1 secretary, and 1 victim witness advocate. The savings there were $68,000, $21,000, and $29,500. We had additional attorneys carry over that voluntary pay cut that saved us $54,000. And the balance of the staff across the board was reduced in pay approximately 1.5% while continuing to work the 40 hours. We also went after that federal stimulus money, which carried over, I believe it was 17 months was what we totally received the funding for, which was $60,000, which gave us an additional $268,500 to operate through this year. We are losing that federal stimulus grant. So we are going to be down $60,000 before we even start this process because that's not being continued forward. We gave you a breakdown of what our basic salaries were, and I know that everybody's happy to be employed in these difficult times, but just so you know what we pay in regards to what other individuals can make in different professions and what our average salary is. But our average prosecutors have 16 years' experience. Their salary is $58,000 some odd dollars. The average salary, according to the Ohio Bar Association, for a private practicing lawyer last year was $113,000. I say that only to let you know that I'm losing people. There's people in my office who are going out into private practice that are attorneys because their workload is smaller. They can make at least as much. Now it's more difficult. Times are tough for everybody. But I'm saying that to you only so you understand what we're dealing with when we have these issues with salary. Our secretaries make on an average $27,700. Investigators, $34,000. Victim witness advocates, about $31,000. Our IT director is about $49,000, and the average for all of our employees is $43,000. Our budget request to you is to maintain what we got last year and request the $60,000 to address that money that we lost from federal stimulus money. That will keep us where we're at. It will not increase our staff. It will keep us working at 40 hours a week and addressing the cases that we have to address. I can tell you when we reduce those hours, we're still paying the penalty for that because the courts continued to function, the cases continued to come in, and we're trying to catch up even today, which is a year and a half going on 2 years later. So there's going to be an impact if we can't continue to operate at what the level we're operating. We gave you a breakdown on what our different divisions do. I know that you're aware of the civil division because Jerry is over here all the time. The criminal division, just so you know, the legislature has seen fit to put open file discovery into effect. It was actually passed by the state Supreme Court. It was modified a little bit, and then the state legislature chose not to strike it down like they did in 1995 when it came up. So it went into effect in July, and because of that, we had to purchase an additional copying machine to copy all the documents that we now put out in open file discovery and have to document our process so that we're accurate and everybody knows what we're giving and everybody gets what we're supposed to give them. Additionally, we had to purchase a video editing machine because everything is high tech now and comes in CDs or DVDs, and we have to be able to edit some of those in order to make sure that, again, the proper things go out to defense counsel. And a disc duplicator, and the cost on those was $23,000 for the copy machine, $10,500 for the video editing equipment, and the disc duplicator is $1,300. Our Children's Services Division, because we received substantial reimbursement from Children's Services and the 4D or 4E money, that's fully funded, and we have approximately a surplus of $30,000 that's going to carry over. Now, we have that issue with always how we're reimbursed and where it comes from, but we're actually $30,000 to the good at this time. I can go through what we do in all the different divisions, and I can address each one of them. I'll go through 4D for you. Our 4D unit, which represents the State of Ohio Jobs and Family Services and relates to the establishment of paternity and the enforcement of child support orders. We have 3 full-time and 2 attorneys on a part-time basis that are assigned to 3 magistrates and 3 domestic relations judges' dockets, so that's 6 different dockets we have to cover. The caseload for the division yearly approximates, we have paternity, new filings were 500, established fraternities were 450, civil non-support was 400 new filings, and the cases closed were 350. The contempt actions for failure to pay child support, new filings was 2,750, and the cases that were closed are 2,700. And the criminal non-supports, where there's actual criminal prosecutions for failure to pay support, there was 210 charged and 115 were sentenced. The total collections from that division is approximately $550,000 a year. That's roughly twice the amount of what we have to seek in reimbursement from the general fund, because you pay approximately 1/3, the rest is funded by the state and the federal government. So they're collecting twice as much as what you, by statute and federal obligation, have to give us in order to maintain that. So that's the breakdown of the 4D division. I can tell you that nothing is getting easier from the standpoint of what's being put on us from a burden from the state legislature. In addition to open file discovery, Senate Bill 77 was passed and went into effect 6 days after that open file discovery. That requires DNA maintenance of evidence and storage and documentation of it. That's for us and all the law enforcement agencies. They're working on a protocol for that right now. I don't think it's gonna be cheap, because the only reason to store that evidence is to protect it to be tested on later down the road. And if you don't protect the integrity of it and it isn't a sterile environment, I don't know how you're going to utilize it for what it's intended.
Dennis, can I suggest that you explain what open file discovery is for people that really don't know
Sure.
what that is? I mean, because we're gonna get out to the public here, and it's just a suggestion.
Okay, sure. The, previously, for probably 25 to 30 years, there was a discovery process, which is the exchange of information from one side of a lawsuit to the other side. In criminal actions, one side of the lawsuit is the prosecutor's office, the other side are the defense attorneys. There was a discovery process that we followed that required us to give certain information to them, and that was done in a regular process on each case as it was filed. Well, they pushed for years for what they refer to as open file discovery, which means that all police reports, all witness statements prior to the witness testifying would be made available, all documentation, all any type of electronic or tangible evidence that you are going to utilize, all records, criminal records of anybody that's going to testify or the defendants has to be brought forward. The biggest problem that this created for us, as opposed to the old way this was done, is all police reports, and when I say all police reports, I mean just about every piece of paper that was generated in a case has to be documented, which means we get it from the police department, we say, okay, this is what we have. That's agreed upon by both the police department and us. Then we have to decide what goes out to the defense counsel, so there's a second evaluation. Then the defense counsel has to acknowledge what we're giving them, so that 5 years down the road, somebody doesn't say, if they're convicted of an offense, well, you didn't give me something I was entitled to that I could have used in defense of my case. If you see a lot of these cases that we're dealing with now, and this is true statewide, 15, 20-year-old cases are coming back and claiming they didn't receive certain evidence. Well, this was partly in response to that. And in order to ensure that this accomplishes what they want to accomplish with it, which is a fair and open playing field, additional information going out, and you can document what everybody received, we have to go through this process of documenting what we get in and what we put out. That's the reason we have to have another copy machine. That's why we have to have the duplicator and everything else that goes along in that process. That also requires people in our office, okay, to adjust and do additional duties to maintain this. So it takes a lot more time away from people who are doing other things. Now, people always say, well, gee, couldn't you do this with a computer? Absolutely. And if I had $2.9 million like Bill Mason had to spend on his computer system to address this in Cuyahoga County, we could probably have developed one. Now, the people that developed his system offered to come in here and rent us the ability to do this at $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year. I think that was the starting price. With as much money as they put into this system, I see every year that that will be going up, but clearly we don't have $120,000 laying around to bring them in to even start the process. And my question is, once you buy in, you're in, because you do it 120, they raise it to 150. What are you gonna do? You're gonna stop using it and go back to the old way? So what we're trying to do is fulfill our responsibilities under open file discovery. We're doing it more labor intensively than they are in Cuyahoga County, but it's the only way we can do it at this point, and we have to duplicate all of this paperwork, all of this documentation, everything that comes into us, and we have to document it, certify it, pass it along, document it again.
And you have to store that stuff too, though.
That is correct. We have files that are gonna be twice as big, if not 3 times as big as we did before, and it's just a process that you're going through. So it's created a problem from the start to finish of our entire criminal division on how we have to address that, and all the cost that goes with it. So that was passed along. Nothing came from Columbus to help anybody. I've talked to prosecutors statewide. Everybody's dealing with the same problem. Even the small communities, I know Wayne County bought into utilizing the computer system. I think it's costing them $55,000 or $60,000. Well, they're going through the same budget problems now, and they're gonna have the problem next year. They don't have the funding for it. So, you know, you have to figure out a way to adjust and meet the requirements, and that's what we're trying to do. So, now, in addition to that, as I mentioned, Senate Bill 77 with the DNA evidence, there's some evidence that you have to keep forever on certain types of cases. Well, you have to store that somewhere. You have to make sure that it's properly documented, that it's properly contained and sealed in an area that's sterile. They're going through the process of a statewide protocol on how to do that that's supposed to be out in December. I don't want to sound like pessimistic, but I don't think that's going to be cheaper for us. And I don't think it's going to be anything that's going to help us. And there's no money coming from Columbus to do that. They have, in part of that same bill, they require that all statements by suspects are recorded. Now, generally, police departments recorded them, but now you're going to have to maintain them. We have to have them available in a format that we can look at them and pass them along. And there's no money that's come down for either us or the departments, the police departments, law enforcement agencies, to address that problem. And then to exacerbate all of that, the police departments, as you alluded to, Commissioner Kokoski, all the cities are suffering cutbacks. The sheriff has suffered a cutback. You have less law enforcement resources doing the same job, which means the cases don't get the service, the time, or the ability to bring it forward in the same fashion, which causes problems for us because we're the end result, ends up at our office. So all those things are continuing to, exacerbate the situation. Nothing's going down case-wise, okay? We have probably a little bit fewer criminal cases have come in, but I can tell you that's not because there's less crime, in my opinion. It's because the police departments don't have the ability to investigate them, okay? So what comes into us is a little bit lower, but the offenses are the more serious offenses that require more and more time, they require more and more effort. Yesterday, I received a phone call from one of the families of the victims in Lorain, where we're still working on a homicide that no one has been prosecuted on. So, I mean, you've got those types of cases that are much more labor-intensive, much more time-intensive, and it continues to seem to get worse. I don't know, I guess I can stop at that point and I'll address any of your questions. So I know some are going to play into, what's going to happen if you cut the budget or what you do. So I've given you our detailed response, okay? We've done what we can. We're labor-intensive. When we don't have the money, people aren't there to do the job, and it cuts back. It's a cutback in services. It's a cutback in what the public receives. So
I'm impressed. Unless my eyes are playing tricks on me, it looks like you're actually asking for less money next year than what you got this year?
no, we're actually asking for what we got last year, and
Plus-
then $60,000 to accommodate that federal stimulus money we're losing.
Well, I saw that in the attached letter, but the bottom, the figures that I'm looking at, it says for 2010 you had 694, in 2011 you're asking for 678.
On 4D?
No, this is under just the prosecutor.
Oh, well, part of it may be because of when we have some of those funds that bleed over, that we get reimbursed on, okay? And then we also saved a certain amount of money that we're giving back to you, that we're hoping to receive, a small amount. So, to a certain extent, but what we're looking at is the same amount of money we got last year we need to operate, and, okay, that's $60,000. Now, the total may be a little bit lower because of the bleed over and how those different reimbursements come in, because we also get 4E money, which comes from Children's Services and the federal subsidy program. So,
But you have heard my statement to everyone else so far about the possible 10% cut in, looks like salaries, but if you have money in other places to compensate for that, then, by all means, I don't think that we've ever really turned down a transfer, so.
right, well, you don't have other money. We did that. That was one of the ways we survived in 2009, is we bled everything we could and reduced everything we could. So we don't have any, surplus sitting somewhere that we can use to shift around. If we get cut 10%, okay, there's people going out the door. That's probably 3 prosecutors and 3 secretaries. And I can tell you, because of the subsidies we receive in certain divisions like 4E and 4D, they're not coming out of those divisions, okay? They're gonna be coming out of the criminal prosecutions in both the juvenile and the adult division. And I can tell you, we will not be able to maintain or man the courtrooms, which means that things are gonna come to a halt, cases that have to be prosecuted within certain timeframes. It's gonna put a burden on that, and maybe you're not gonna be able to prosecute. I can tell you what people in other counties have told me that have been cut. They just simply told people, we're not prosecuting. And, I mean, people are gonna end up finding out, if you don't have the bodies, you can't do it. We're
Exactly.
labor intensive again.
That's right. We're
This
not
isn't
making
something-
widgets.
No, exactly. We don't manufacture a product other than what the service is we deliver. And when we deliver it, people are coming and ask for it. It's like police or fire services. When you
Right.
need it now.
Yep.
And that's gonna be devastating to us.
I know.
mean, we can't go back to what we did before, where we reduced our hours. It's simply not feasible. We did that because we saved less hours would be lost by reducing than by laying off, but we can't do that again. It's just gonna be too disruptive, it's not gonna be efficient, and it's gonna put us in a bind where we're not gonna be able to recover like we're trying to do right now. I'll answer any other questions you got.
Other questions?
Appreciate it, Dennis.
Comments?
Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis. Our final presentation is from Domestic Relations.
I'll pick another.
Domestic Relations. I see Judge Basinski is here, and Judge Boros, and Doug Master. Oh, and Judge Berta as well. Judge Basinski is here with his pink tie.
It's
Love it.
orange.
That's orange, Betty.
Thank you.
I love it regardless of its color.
Maybe? I
Thank
don't
you.
know.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you for coming this morning.
Do you have a copy for me, Mr. Messer?
You know, you have to give our clerk a copy.
You look as harassed as I feel.
I think you two should belong to the same club. I don't care.
Is that what, make something of nothing club?
Yeah.
That's your job. Good morning, Your
Get
Honor.
with
Good morning.
Don Walther and figure out how to squeeze blood out of a turnip.
There you go, there you go.
You're on.
Thank you. On behalf of Judge Boros and Judge Berta, we thank you for the opportunity. The reason you've drawn me to speak to you today is I happen to be the administrative judge this year. Next year, you'll hear from Judge Boros or Judge Berta, whoever's up next. I found it interesting when the Commissioner Kokoski said this morning, people don't know what we do in the county. We'd like to take a moment and kind of explain to you a little bit about what we do in the county. You have many funding people that come knocking on your door. Unique among them are the courts, and there are 3. We believe we are the most unique among those 3. We provide the most different services. We man the 24-hour facilities, the detention home, and all those kinds of things. And we'd like to explain some of those things to you. Out on South Mary Ridge Road, we have a judicial complex. It's ours. We start with the detention home. We have a boys and girls detention home there. It's a secure facility, obviously. It's a 24-hour facility. What I'm talking about is not following what Doug has prepared, so you understand that. I'm talking differently. You please use that because that's in much more detail than what I'm speaking about. At the detention home, capacity 56 young people. We can handle 44 males, 12 females. State and federal guidelines determine what we do, how we run that facility. We limit detention there by law, 90 days. That's the longest we can hold a child there, 90 days. For this fiscal year from January, or this calendar year from January 1st to November 15th, we've had the following. We have housed 604 males, 237 females, for a total of 841 children. Average population per day, 43.1. Average stay, 16.3 days. We provide services for those young people that are there. We don't just house them. We provide services. We contract with Educational Services Center of Lorain County. It's the Lorain County Board of Education. They provide 3 full-time teachers plus 1 part-time art instructor. We have a life skills program there. For social education and vocational skills, we meet with children on Thursday nights, social awareness, peer relationship, those kinds of things. We contract for mental health services. Contracts with Applewood Centers to provide assessments for residents who are considered at risk. We further have a contract with Dr. Deborah Karicki, who provides psychological examinations for us upon our request. We have a contract with Catholic Charities. They provide risk assessments on domestic violence cases. A child has struck a parent has struck a child. Under medical services, we have TB screening through Lorain County TB Clinic. We have a contract with a doctor, Dr. Douglas McDonald, and a contract with a nurse. Also down the road, we have 2 group homes. We have Stepping Stone for boys, capacity 20. We have Pathways for girls, capacity 10, and we have Turning Point. Turning Point is a short-term facility.
That's co-ed, maximum of 10. Stepping Stone and Pathways are 21-week facilities. We again contract with the same Lorain County Board of Education. We provide 2 teachers there. We run 2 separate school systems. Average stay at Stepping Stone and Pathways, 21 weeks. We gradually wean the child out. Then they go into transition after 21 weeks. Transition and aftercare extend for months after we've had the child for the 21 weeks. Turning Point is kind of unique. Police departments are very happy with Turning Point. They have a child that they've picked up. The child does not qualify for admission into the detention home. What are they going to do with the child? They take the child to Turning Point. We will take the child. We hold them for up to 14 days. Again, that's a 24-hour facility. It's the only remaining runaway shelter in Lorain County. It's the only one that's left. Obviously, we have minimum staffing, licensing also there. We have various programs at Stepping Stone and Pathways, Thinking for a Change, Boys Council, Girls Circle Group. We provide those. We're also into contract services with Applewood Services for individual and family counseling, Lakata for group and family drug and alcohol counseling, behavior therapy through the Norm Center. We have teen monitoring through Catholic Charities. We have 17 mentors for children. They are always filled. We enter that contract with Catholic Charities. We refer clients to other agencies as necessary: Beach Book, Psych and Psych. Also at the detention home, we have an intake department. We have an intake magistrate there. He is there when we bring a child to the detention home. Within 24 hours, we must bring that child in and explain to him what the charges are against him. We also have a magistrate that's on duty 24 hours a day. Last night at 9 o'clock, if the police department from Lorain brought a child over, before that child can be admitted, they have to call that duty magistrate, find out if he may be accepted or she may be accepted. The magistrate makes that decision. We do that weekends, every holiday. We have a duty magistrate at the detention home all the time. If, for example, we admit a child on Friday, that duty magistrate must come in on Saturday to the detention home and explain to the child why he is being held. Having discussed the facilities out on South Murray Ridge Road, let's talk a little bit about what we have across the street in the Justice Center. One of the main things we have is Family Divorce Services. Family Divorce Services is an umbrella for lots of groups. First is Voices for Children. Voices for Children is our guardian program. It was started in 1990. We train and provide guardians for children. Trainings, we do it in 2 sessions, one in the spring and one in the fall. We just finished fall. This year we graduated 34 new guardians. We presently have active 125 guardians. Last calendar year, they helped and assisted in 513 cases. 513 cases. Before we had Voices for Children, we had to appoint attorneys. There was the expense of that. The guardians volunteer their time. They volunteer their expenses. They serve freely. The children we ask them to represent, they're all damaged psychologically. Lots of them are damaged physically. They are marvelous. They provide the court with another source, another way to determine what to do with this child. We have domestic support. Domestic support, that's a contract group. Each year, each fall, we enter into a contract with Jobs and Family Services. We provide a compliance manager, 2 full-time magistrates, full-time hearing officer for parents who have not paid child support. Magistrates hear these matters up until the final hearing. Final hearings are always had with the judges. Each of us do that twice a month. That's a full-day deal for each of us. So far this year, Judge Berta has handled 960 cases. I have handled 1,077. Judge Boris, 1,178. We're still trying to figure out what happened to Judge Berta's caseload, but I'm sure it'll even out at the end. That's a total caseload of 3,208 just in this division. Funds generated because of that, $422,651 generated. We have a mediation department. We find that we go to mediation, we can hopefully sidestep a trial. Mediation works between parents, it works between a parent and a child, all those kinds of things. We have 4 trained mediators who work in that department. So far this year, we have serviced 478 clients in the mediation department. Under Family Divorce Services, we have an investigation department that determines, goes in depth and gives us information regarding custody of children. Also, we have the Seminar for Separating Parents. This was started in 1992. Anyone who files for divorce in Lorain County, or a dissolution, or a change of custody, must come and spend 2 hours with us. We do those on Monday nights and Saturday mornings. If any of the commissioners are interested, we're doing it this Saturday morning at 9:30. You're certainly welcome across the street. It goes 2 hours. I attend that session. I speak at that session. It's interesting to see parents come. Most of them don't want to be there. What's that old man going to tell me about my children that I don't already know? However, on the exit interviews, when they fill out the sheets, better than 9 out of 10 are glad they came and they've learned something, and it's going to change the way they handle their children in their divorce. We have that for married parents. We did not have one for never married parents. In juvenile court, we deal with parents that were never married. We handle custody of those children in juvenile court. We felt that these children were entitled to the same benefits, the same types of services that we provide for married parents. So we have the Seminar for Unmarried Parents. It was originally funded by a grant through the Ohio Supreme Court. We ran a video, did all those things through the community college. We are the only one in the state of Ohio, the only county that has a seminar for unmarried parents. We think that's important. On the juvenile side, we have a clerk's office. We have our own clerk. The administrative judge is the clerk. Mr. Nabokowski is not the clerk of the juvenile court. The administrative judge is. We employ 20 people in that clerk's office. It is amazingly busy. The volume is huge. We've had difficulty holding people. Since the first of the year, we've had to switch and fill 10 positions. Some have obviously been promoted, some have just left. It's a very difficult place to work. The volume is really something. Another program we have that I'm sure you're not aware of is our Lorain County Public Attendance Program. Public attendance. We deal with the following school districts. We have contracts with them. Avon Lake, Clearview, Columbia, Elyria, Firelands, Keystone, Lorain County Joint Vocational, Midview, North Ridgeville, Oberlin, Sheffield, Sheffield Lake, and Wellington. We used to have Lorain. We lost Lorain when they hit the budget crunch. This program is directed at children who do not attend school. We have found that if you don't attend school, you fall behind, and school becomes a problem for you. So in 1993, we started this program. To get it started and to continue it, we partnered with the following: Scripps Howard Foundation, Stockard Foundation, Ohio Department of Youth Services, the Ohio Office of Criminal Justice, in order to fund. It's interesting, for the number of children who come in with unexcused absence, we've reduced that amount by 81%. 81%. The court pays half the cost, the school system pays the other half. That's our agreement with them. We also have, obviously, the usual programs. We have in-home detention, where we release a child or don't place a child in the detention home. We have monitors. We recently received a grant for $72,000 for additional monitors. They are expensive. We have the usual, and I'm not even going to speak of them. You know about them. The probation department. We have community intervention program. That's like intensive probation. We have special services, where we did deal with sexual offenders and drug and alcohol problems. We have 3 specialized courts. We have 2 drug courts. Those are run by Judge Boros. One's for the family, one's for the child. Over 78% of that funding comes from grants. Does not come from general fund money. This year, Judge Burdick has come with a mental health court. It's unique. It's necessary. See, we're seeing children with serious problems, and we must provide for that. We have a transportation program. We transport. We're the only county in the state that transports our own children to the Department of Youth Services. Everybody else, the sheriff does it. Sheriff can't afford to put a transport officer on, so we have done it. We will continue to do that. Sheriff's committee is very pleased by that. Computer system. We maintain our computer system with 2 full-time and 1 part-time person. That's not only the computers in that building, but also in the outlying out on South Murray Ridge Road. It's all interconnected. That system was purchased 20 years ago. It was significantly updated 10 years ago. We went from a VMS platform to a Windows at substantial cost at that time. Took 6 months for the conversion, and that also included time to train employees. We have continued to piecemeal update that program. Presently, we're updating the software and imaging system. $2,500 for software, imaging $11,000. We pay that out of our computer fund. That is not general fund money. These upgrades were estimated to add 10 years to the life of our computer system. We're also adding a certified mailer option for $7,200. Mailroom supervisor estimated that that will save $20,000. We share in mailing costs. You pay part, we pay part. This should help both of us. Those are all the services we have. What have we done to save money? How have we done that? In the banner year in 2008, you contributed to the court $8,632,638. You cut us in 2009, you cut us in 2010. We are now at $7,012,666, a reduction of almost 20%. We have lived with that. We have made it through. How did we do that? We placed a cap at the detention home. Remember I told you we could do 56? We're not doing that now. We're doing it 36 boys, 12 girls. 12 is a magic number. You notice those are divided by 12. If we have 36 boys, we need so many supervisors. If we go to 37, we must bring in another supervisor. Those are magic numbers. Unfortunately, we're not able to keep to that cap. When I checked, we have 40 boys and 13 girls, which means we're over on both. When I gave you the average that we've had for the day, that was 41. That was not the number we need. When we got into this, we were able to lay off 7 staff. That was way back in 2009. All trailing costs have been paid. We no longer have that. We shut down the girls' detention home. We shut it down. We moved the girls in to a separate area in the boys' detention home. It's terribly crowded. Obviously, they cannot have contact. They can't even have sight of one another. It's extremely difficult. But we're able to do that. When we closed the girls' detention home, we saved lots of things. We saved heating costs, electricity, water costs, all those kinds of things. It's a vacant building. It would be better used. It would be better for the girls if we could use it. We cannot. We contract with the Ohio Department of Education for school lunches at all of our facilities. School lunches, breakfast reimbursement. In the years we've been doing this, 9 years, we have returned to the county over $1 million because of that Department of Education grant that we received. Over $1 million. We have reduced medical costs. As I indicated, we have gone to contract services. We have problems transporting. We were going to close Turning Point. Remember that shelter, that temporary one that the police officers love? We were going to have to close that. Thankfully, Mental Health Board and Children's Services have come to the rescue, and they are providing funding for us. We have been able to keep those open, that Turning Point open. We've reduced staff by attrition. The only ones we've laid off are the 7 I indicated because of the trailing costs. We've waited for people to leave. In 2008, we had 225 full-time employees. That's full and part-time. 225. Today, this morning, we have 175 full-time employees and 12 part-time employees, for a total of 187 employees. So we have gone from 225 to 187. You asked us to reduce staff. We have done that. Problem at the detention home is, what do we do when we get to that magic 12 number? We have a cadre now of relief workers. They're not full-time employees. They're not part-time employees. They shift. Lots of them are college students and people like that. We have 11 of those. We have increased our efforts to obtain outside funding. At this time of the year, as administrative judge, I seem to be signing my name all the time for grants. This is the time of the year that you do that. In Mr. Messer's letter, he talks about magistrates. 3 magistrates. We keep hearing about 3 magistrates. That court has 3 magistrates per judge. Why in the world would they want that? And why don't they get rid of some of their magistrates? Nobody else has magistrates numbered 3. And we do have 3. Let me explain how they work. There are 3. Each judge has 3. You have to remember, each judge across the street has at least 1 magistrate. Judge Walter has 1. Judge Leske has 1. Everybody has 1. So what we have are 2 more than everybody else. Our 3 magistrates are these. One is a domestic relations magistrate. One is a juvenile magistrate. The other is a law clerk, juvenile, DR magistrate. Bounces back and forth as caseloads are needed. I'm quoting from Mr. Messer's letter because he says it better than I. Over the years, attention has been given to the number of magistrates. The work of magistrates in our court is not well understood by those outside the court. Some believe the court has too many magistrates for the tasks at hand. A comprehensive review would reveal just the opposite to be true. In juvenile cases, remember, we have all these municipal courts that handle the speeding tickets and all those things. We handle all of that for juveniles. We're the only place they come. That's traffic offenders, unruly children, delinquent children, children in need of protective services. They come to see us. We have over 1,500 traffic cases every year. 1,500 traffic cases. Each case must be completed in as little as 3 months. 3 months to complete them. Time frames. We have mandated time frames. We have a speedy trial requirement in juvenile court. Ready? 15 days from the time we arrest that child to the time of the trial. 15 days. Now, that can be waived. Do we try every case at 15 days? Of course not. But that's the requirement. Unless we can get waivers or things, we must be prepared to try that case. If it falls today, that means it's got to come up on my docket or a magistrate's docket within 2 weeks. I don't know. It's very difficult to plan for that. We're also limited by our holds at the detention home. We have a child there, maybe he's being held for murder, but we have to get him out of there in 90 days. So we have to move that case. We have lots of hearings that we must go through before that 90-day period expires, or we release the child. We don't like doing that. There are children's services cases. This type of case, although fewer in number, again, I'm quoting Mr. Messer, utilizes a great deal of docket time due to the frequency of the matter being contested. Remember what we're doing. We're taking permanent custody of a child from a parent or parents. You know, at the end of the hearing, if you grant the request, you look down at the parent and say, you are no longer the parent. That's pretty heavy stuff. It's got to be done very quietly, very capably, and we must dot the I's and T's. Strict time constraints on when hearings must occur, number of steps in the process, and magistrate requirements to provide findings of fact. We have to write opinions on every hearing we have. Didn't used to do that. Most of our felony cases have 3 to 6 months time limits. That means the case must be completed within 6 months. These time limits we give you, each of us, excuse me, each of us must file reports with the Supreme Court every month, both in juvenile court and DR court. We have to tell them how many cases we got, how many cases we processed, how many penned. So they set the requirements for us. They're not our choices. But the felony case, we would have at least 6 hearings on every felony case, minimum. Somebody's got to hear those. Those are always heard with magistrates or judges. Final hearings, almost always with judges. I've just talked about juvenile. We have domestic magistrates. You have to have somebody to hear a temporary orders hearing. Who's going to decide? Parents have filed for divorce. Who gets custody for now? Who pays the visa bill? Who pays the utility bill? Does somebody move from the house? Somebody's got to hear that. Somebody must hear that. We have time limits on that. Further, in that court, we must hear petitions for domestic violence. You don't know those are coming. As you come in the morning, you may get 1, 2. We never go a day without one of the 3 of us getting domestic violence. We get emergency custody problems. See, when you have that hearing, then you must have the next hearing within 10 days. We have all these time limits that we must do it. The 3 judges, Judge Berta, Judge Boros, and myself, we take great pride in trying to keep our dockets current. We really do. We think families are better served when matters are held promptly, if we can move forward on it. Mr. Messer provided a list of hearings that we have. You can see that. It shows that we have some minimum 10,500 hearings. He's got 2 charts for you, one for juvenile and one for domestic. Those are just ballparks. They're certainly minimums. They can go well beyond what we see there. You know, we were concerned about the number of magistrates. Remember, I have 1 in DR, 1 in juvenile, plus the 1/3 that I have. So we went to other counties and looked at what they have. We went to Medina County, just to the southeast of us. Medina County, the juvenile judge there, 1 juvenile judge, that 1 juvenile judge has 4 magistrates. 1 juvenile judge, 4 magistrates. We have 3 juvenile judges, and they have 3 magistrates plus the 1/3. We checked on their domestic relations court judge. That judge also has 4. 1 domestic relations court judge, 4 magistrates. We then went to Cleveland. What are we doing in the big city? Cuyahoga County, 17 magistrates, 5 judges. More than 3. We have 1. That's juvenile court. Their domestic relations court is the same. So you can see that 3 magistrates is not unreasonable. It's not unreasonable in light of the workload we have. It's not unreasonable in light of what other counties are doing. It's the nature of the beast, unfortunately. See, the court system's kind of unique, and it's much like what you do. We can't say we don't want to do juvenile cases this day. It keeps coming. We can't slow it down. People expect that we will handle their matter. When you come to the court for divorce, you want somebody to hear that. You want it over with. You want to get on about your life. We must continue to do that. We believe we've done our part. In the last 5 years, please listen carefully. In the last 5 years, we have returned to the general division, and return's a poor word because you didn't have it before. It's revenue we were able to generate that we have given to you in 5 years, $4,092,288 even. $4,092,228. Where'd that money come from? Where'd we get that money to give to you? And that, by the way, does not include general fund money that we returned. General fund money that we returned to you that we did not use totals during that same 5-year period $302,000. We are projecting this year that we will return to you some $20,000. We will meet our budget. We will return to you approximately $20,000. But we have generated $4,092,288 that we gave to the general fund. What do we need for this year?
Wait, Judge, you were going to tell us where you got that
Oh,
money
I'm
from.
sorry, sure. Charges for services, $46,572.14. Miscellaneous revenue, $16. Fines, forfeitures, and fees, when we assess fines, forfeitures, fees, $722,437.12. These are the 5-year figures. Food services reimbursement. Remember I told you we enter into contract with Board of Education? 5 years, we saved $651,885.29. Domestic support. You pay us to have a domestic support. We go out and enter into a contract with Jobs and Family Services. We return. They then pay that. We shoot that money back to you. We return it to you. In the 5 years, we return to you $2,526,665.06. And finally, donations. Donations reflects the money that the Board of Mental Health and the Children's Services have donated to carry our short-term facility out there. Turning Point, $144,711. That totals $4,092,287.59.
Thank you. So
You're welcome.
approximately $800,000 a year for the last 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I can give you those. We are projecting this year, well, we've done most of this. This year is $685,554.76. That does not include the $20,000 we expect to return to you. What do we need for this year? Here's 2 things we don't need this year, but I want you to consider, and if you find some money under a stone somewhere, I wish you'd consider that. This is not need. We need a caged van. We really do need a caged van. The one we have died. We have several, but our oldest one died. Our oldest one was affectionately known at the transport place as the Beast. It's a 1994 Ford Econoline. It kept breaking down. We came to see county commissioners. You said, take it out to the county garage. They said, oh, you can't do anything with it. We came back and said, county garage says you can't do anything. Well, county garage doesn't know. Take it somewhere else. Where do you want us to take it? Take it to Ed Melnick. So we took it to Ed Melnick. They were concerned about us driving it home. It had over 170,000 miles on it. We use that to transport children. We have since taken it out. It's at the county garage. We pulled our plates off. It's waiting to be auctioned. So we'd like you to consider a caged van. Last time you bought a vehicle for us, 2005, December, 5 years ago. You did, however, in 2006, allow us the use of a van. We share it with you. You will not allow us to cage it because you have needs for it and you use it sometimes and we use it sometimes. So you did provide that. We need a caged van. We would hope you would consider that. Another thing we don't need, but if you find the money, we would ask that you consider court-appointed fees. Mr. Cortez and I have talked about this at some length. He knows that last time we raised set court-appointed fees for attorneys in juvenile court was 1991. They get $25 for out of court and $30 in court. Ready? We are the absolute lowest in the state of Ohio. Of 88 counties we go, and we can't find anybody who pays $25 and $30.
What are they paying elsewhere?
50 and 60.
Times how many cases?
I don't know how many they have. I know the rates. Obviously, cases would vary from year to year. We don't need the 50, 60, but we'd sure appreciate taking us up to where general division is. That's 40 and 50. See, we have such a small group of lawyers that do this, a very small group. And it's not unusual for any of us to go out and have a hearing and sit out and look, and there are 3 or 4 court-appointed that we're paying for that are there. Could be a permanent custody hearing, a children's services hearing. You have a lawyer for the mother. You have a lawyer for the father. You have a lawyer for the child. Or an aunt, or an uncle, or a grandmother. And we're paying for all those. It's tough to schedule. We're down to such a small number because nobody wants. Well, you hire outside counsel. You know what lawyers cost. You are not hiring lawyers anywhere for $25 and $30. I know you're not. We would like to. So if you think about, if you find some money under the rock, if you think about that, we would appreciate that. Where are we in the full budget? Here's what we would like you to do. We would like you to keep it where it is. You've hit us twice. Not everybody was hit twice. We were.
Everybody but the sheriff's department.
I thought prosecutor.
They were hit.
I thought they got money back.
I don't believe so.
Well, he talked about getting it back, and so he was able to go to full staff.
Lisa, how did the prosecutor get their hours back? Pardon me?
He reworked how they were doing things over there.
We didn't give him additional funding. No.
But you didn't cut them again. That's the only thing I'm saying.
Yes, we cut everybody but the sheriff.
No.
No?
No,
The
that's
courts-
what I thought.
The courts, us, the auditors, Board of Elections, there were like 5 departments that took the second round of cuts last
We-
year.
we
Everybody
took
else
2.
froze. Correct.
We
You
took
took
2.
the same cuts as us, George. You were 3% last year and then 10% the year prior.
Right. We've gone to 20%. Remember that. We have cut 20%. We're having problems with that. Here's our problem. See, it used to be neat. We're coming up on our Christmas party. And it used to be that we'd send Miss Tansey, our fiscal officer, over to find out what are the commissioners going to do for the upcoming year. Because we wanted to announce that at the Christmas party. And it was kind of neat for the administrative judge, because the administrative judge would say, the commissioners have given us 1%, and each of you are going to get a 1% raise. And they thought we were wonderful, and we didn't do anything, you had done it. But we would make, sometimes it was 2%. See, we haven't made that announcement in 3 years. We haven't made that announcement. I understand we're not the only ones. We have given no raises, other than if you're changed in position, you
Right.
move into another pay grade,
Correct.
you're entitled to that. But
Right.
other than that, we have not done that. There has been nothing across the board in any way. We can't afford it. But there's a backlash on that. There's a problem with that. This has had impact on staff. More FMLA claims, we're seeing those. An increase in sick time usage, we're seeing that. Used to be 66 hours in 2005, now it's 87. Staff are leaving. They're leaving. They're retiring in greater number, leaving with no jobs. They're simply saying, I can't do it anymore, don't want to do this. Well, there's lots of circumstances why that happens. We believe it's because they're being asked to do more with less. We find this out in our exit interviews. When we talk to them when they're leaving, we exit interview everybody, and they say we can't do it anymore. See, we simply cannot take another reduction. We really can't. We submitted a budget in March. That's what we believe is reasonable and necessary. That's the budget we need to provide the best juvenile and domestic relations court for the citizens of Lorain County. We've backed away from that. We're down to just keep us where we were. Remember what we've done. We've reduced employees from 225 to 187. We've reduced our demands upon you almost 20%. We have given you $4 million in 6 years. We have, you notice I kept talking about contract services. We've gone to a lot of contract services. We believe that's what we have to do. We don't know what else you want us to do. We cannot cut further and not provide what is necessary. We have done everything you've asked. We would ask that you simply keep us where we are.
If we would do that, then that means we have to cut another department much deeper to make up for the 10% that we would not be cutting you. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard just the people that are here today and the people that were here last week and the people that will be here next week. Nobody can afford any more cuts. How do we save
the obvious
you?
thing you
I mean,
have to do-
especially your budget is so extremely large.
Well, I just gave you some idea of what we do, Commissioner.
I
That's why I
understand.
spent that time doing that. You didn't know we had the program for truancy. I'm sure you did not. You don't know that we have these sessions. We have to fund that. Sure, it's large, I realize, but we have cut it, we have done, and we have returned $4 million to you. Run through and see how many else. I'm not talking about branches of government that have to collect on like tax money. This isn't tax money. We've been able to get out there and fight and scrap and turn $4 million over to you. I'm not sure anybody else has done that. Maybe they have. I'm not familiar with other. I've got my hands full trying to run this court. Obviously, if you're telling me that must be, then you're going to have to look at income. You're going to have to generate income. That's your primary responsibility. Anything else?
Would you give us the figure that you operated on this year?
Sure.
Please.
It was the $7 million?
Is that it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then it's $7,012,666.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Judge.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions from the board?
Nice
Mr. Kalo?
job, Judge. No, nice job.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for your
you.
presentation.
Do you want to hear from either Judge Boros or Judge Berta?
Only if they have something to add.
Anything further?
The only thing I would indicate is.
You have to come to the microphone. We'll get yelled at.
The only thing that I would indicate is it's coming from a background that was not in the juvenile division before I got here. I didn't realize how many on-the-record hearings we had to have. I didn't realize how much I would be on the bench, how much the magistrates would. I was used to civil law where you did a lot, or criminal where you did a lot of entries. We're always on the record, and that's where a lot of the expense comes in. But there's no way to get around that because the Ohio Revised Code mandates that. And the only other point I wanted to add, and although Judge Baczynski covered it very well, is we have to run our own detention facilities. So that's where a lot of that expense goes. So we don't have a separate, like the sheriff would have their budget, obviously. That's where we differ from the general division, as well as running our own clerk's office by the code, Ohio Revised Code. So we have to run that just as the probate division does. So a lot of the expenses come from that. So it's pretty obvious, obviously, but for those who didn't know, and I'm sure you all know that, but I thought the public should know that a lot of what we have to do is mandated by the code. It's not because we want to do it. It's because the code says you have to do this, and there's really no way around it.
We are partners with the state.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your time.
Why does it
Appreciate it.
always feel like the short end of the partnership?
Well, they just don't send any money to go along with the partnership. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.
And Doug Messer. At this time, our budget hearings are concluded for today. If you didn't get enough today, you can tune in again next week. We have some more. And Madam Clerk, we'll return to the regular order of business, please.
Under Resolutions Number 1, Job and Family Services Bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Investments.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Appropriations.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Transfers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
No advances, no repayments, requisitions.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yes, I'd like to at least hold or pool. There's a $900 allied waste charge for the engineer's office, and
I went looking for it after you talked to me, and
Okay.
I didn't know who had the packages, so I'm glad I was going to bring it up when you discussed it. And you
Okay.
wanted me to check into it.
yeah, there. When we reduced the tipping fees for allied waste, we also kind of got a deal from them that they would pick up all the garbage for all county buildings, and even though the engineer's not general fund, he has his own funding source. He still is one of our county buildings.
Right.
And the sanitary is under the commissioner. So I'm going to try to get that taken care of for you, Ken.
Very
So
good.
if you,
Hold
can
it.
we pull that one?
Yes, please. Thank you for
Noticing that?
pointing that out. Yes.
Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Travel.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Bills.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Under the Commissioners, authorize various personnel actions as indicated on the summary sheet for employees within jurisdiction of Lorain County
Mr.
Commissioners.
Cordez?
I do have a potential hire at the county home that I wish to discuss with the board. Also, continuation of our ongoing discussions with regard to our labor contracts with the steelworkers and the Teamsters and the operating engineers at the bridge, and 911 contract. So we still have them moving forward. Both of those topics, and let me back up a second. I also didn't have an opportunity to talk to you last week on a potential sale of real estate, and I want to have that discussion. All three of those topics are allowable for executive session under the Sunshine Law, so I would ask at the conclusion of our regular board meeting today, we go into executive session and talk about those issues. Thank you.
Do you want to talk about the UAW tentative agreement at this point, or do you want to bring that up under your comments?
I can bring it up either way, Commissioner. However, the board feels comfortable. Maybe when we get to our business, will give us plenty of time to dialogue. There may be some questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Approve and waive the reading of the Salem County Commissioners meeting minutes of November 3rd, 2010.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Approve and enter in contract with the Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield to provide the county vision program. By switching carriers from Spectera, it will save the county $16,000 and provide the members with a larger network of providers.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Under Community Development, award various contracts for homeowners to receive grant assistance from CDBG FY09 home repair activity, which includes a contingency for any unforeseen change orders and bids being most responsive paid from the home repair account. One S&J Home Maintenance Grafton, the amount of $6,930 for Wilma Workman at 10721 Indian Hollow Road, Carlisle, for a roof replacement. 13 invitations were sent, 2 received. 2 Pioneer Heating and Air Conditioning in Elyria in the amount of $4,455 for Don and Carol Mosier at 9465 West Ridge Road, Elyria Township, for a water heater and furnace replacement. 22 invitations were sent, 3 received.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Under Domestic, approve funding in the amount of, approve the funding request in the amount of $29,771 from the Juvenile Accountability Block Grant for continuation of the Merit Project 2 Public Schools Attendance Program, and authorize $3,308 from County General Fund.
This is an additional $3,308 from our monies, wherever they are, to be used as a match.
It's accurate.
Also moved.
I'll second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Sheriff approve and enter a maintenance agreement in the amount of $2,246.40 with SunGuard for the license support for MDTs in the patrol vehicles effective December 1st, 2010 through November 30th, 2011.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Mr. Cortez, County Administrator?
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I know that the commissioners may have a few things they want to talk about, so I'm just going to yield. It's been a long morning, and I'll be prepared to discuss whatever you bring up under your business. Thank you.
Assistant County Prosecutor? Mr.
Commissioners, I have no report this morning.
Oh, yay.
Hey, nobody's suing us.
Commissioners report.
Well, Ken's in the audience. I want to thank you, Ken, because I got a lot of thank yous for the blinking stop sign at 303 and Whitehead Road. Hopefully that'll be a much safer intersection. I did attend the Amherst American Legion had made a new stone in the cemetery on Cleveland Street for Veterans Day, and they had a nice ceremony to dedicate that. I guess, well, the tentative agreement I'd like for you to discuss, and also thinking in ways of cutting for our department. I know we've cut, I don't know, 30-some people already, and if we had to take a 10% hit in our salaries as thin as we are, I was wondering if we could check to see how much it would cost us to sub out at least a portion of our custodial crew.
Well,
If we can get figures on that.
Sure, Commissioner. First off, last evening, we reached tentative agreement with United Auto Workers, representing one of our largest blocks of employees out of Job and Family Services. The next steps are for their membership body to review and take a vote to ratify the contract, and for us to take a vote and ratify on our end. The challenges that we were facing were many, and it was quite a give and take process. And I know that the negotiating team worked as hard and as diligently as ours, and were very frustrated by some things as well as we were. And a lot of that has to do with the environment that we find ourselves in, with regard to funding options. I'm pleased to tell you that the negotiating team is going to take back to their membership for a vote a new 3-year contract that has 0 pay raises for 3 years, so it has pay freezes, and provides for an 8 paid, 8 worked workday. It was something that the board was committed to, and it's been a long time commitment since we started with the United Steelworkers last year. We did back off a couple other things because we were able to get the full 8-hour workday. And we weren't generating a lot of support to change some of the holidays around the county that we needed, and it was just difficult to try to have a contract with different work days in it, and that may be our next objective. But I think it showed a real willingness on their part to take back what's probably going to be very unfavorable to their membership with the freezers and with an increase workday of about 13%. I think it shows real partnership and leadership on their negotiating team's part and United Auto Workers to work with us to reduce cost. I was going to hopefully present some figures this morning with regard to the status of Job and Family Services and the amount of employees that have been reduced over there. Like the courts, they've seen a tremendous reduction, mostly through attrition with their employees, and I'll present that as the weeks unfold here. They've gone from being one of the largest county agencies to being a medium-sized county agency, and they continue to shrink, and the caseloads continue to increase. The employees out there are working very hard. Their work is increased, their hours are going to increase, their pay hasn't increased. And there's really not a clear line of sight to when that may end. And it may become worse because most people don't realize, so stated here, the bulk of the funding for Job and Family Services comes from the state. It's passed from the federal government through the state down to the local departments. And as we all know, the state's seeing significant problems on their level, and we may be able to have to deal with additional resource reductions over the coming year. We're not quite sure yet. But this is a step in the right direction locally for us to do our part here. hopefully the state will do their part and understand the needs, and they cannot continue to push their problems down onto the local community. Time and time again, we find them solving their problems by creating problems for us.
Absolutely.
Secondly, with regard to the ability to possibly look at reductions and outsourcing of work, we can do that. We have the ability to take some more cuts. We haven't filled positions, we gap positions, and we generated some salary line item surpluses this year by leaving positions unfilled, just in the event that additional cuts was going to be necessary in the coming year. We were hopeful they wouldn't have to be, but we were prepared for them throughout the course of the years. But a large cut would also require us to still do some further reductions. We outsourced all of our printing. We anticipate on a mature year saving well over $300,000 from that move. We've saved close to $100,000 by automating switchboards. We did some changes over at the Justice Center with our desk staff over there that saved probably close to $60,000 or $70,000. And we continue to
Move tax map into the auditor's fund.
Well, that really wasn't on our line items. I'm just talking specifically to commissioners. That's a general fund change that saved the general fund, but I was specifically talking about the departments that you have me monitoring for you under your umbrella of direct responsibility. We're looking at those ways. Just the other day, we were getting ready to enter into a copier is becoming fairly obsolete. It's a pretty big one. So Lisa was working with our vendors, and we actually bought a used surplus but newer machine that's going to cost us less each month, but still we're able to get maintenance and parts for. So we're going to reduce our costs, still get a machine that's newer than one we have, but it's not going to be brand new. So we're looking at those methods to save funds. We could go on for hours sitting out here of everything that we look.
Please don't.
Well, you want me to write it all down and send it to a letter to the editor. What do you think I'm going to do, buy the whole paper?
I want you to write it down so I can read it at my leisure and I don't have to sit and listen to you. That's what I want. Humor me.
6 more weeks, Jim. Just 6 more weeks.
You're missing me when I'm gone.
We most assuredly are looking at the issues now that are returning small gains, but they're returning many small gains that equate to a large amount of savings over time.
And I believe, not to interrupt you, I believe a lot of the other departments have when they're asking if they're frozen to last year's budget numbers. They have done a lot of that too. So I don't think anybody here has been squandering money or not using it properly. And just with Commissioner Kokoski's comments, another 10% decrease in personnel, I just don't see how we're going to be able to sustain that and continue providing the service unless, as Prosecutor Will said and Judge Basinski, they just won't get those services.
Absent generating additional revenue, we have, I believe, an obligation to come up with Plan B. And I am also currently given par with enforcing all the continued reductions that are in place and have been implemented in the last 2.5 years. We can limp into 2011 and maintain par where we are now, and we are seeing a slight amount of uptick that may give us some relief.
Well,
however,
a slight amount of uptick in a little bit of the sales tax, but looking towards the state cuts next year as they try to balance their budget.
Well, that's where I was
going to
$1 million
or $1.5 million.
That's where I was going to go. The line of sight that I have now with regards to discussions with each individual commissioner is what we're going to do in 2012. We've pretty well resolved most of the problem for 2011, but if we don't generate increased revenue, we have to prepare for 2012. The unforeseen events that will most likely occur, but we don't know at what level they will occur, and as a strong indication, and we were hopeful that we were only going to see about a 25% reduction in our local government funds. I think that we're probably going to see more than 25% right now. But that's hard to say, and it depends on how much scrapping goes on. with that. And that's very sizable. That's in the millions. The second thing is I'm concerned with going into 13 with the commercial activity tax and the phase down of that. It's supposed to be phased down. I think they may phase out any revenue that comes to the local source. So those two things I'm looking at, pretty strongly to see whether we're going to be able to overcome. If they do that, we're going to have to generate additional savings or revenue to replace that in the millions mid-year. It'll be the middle of the year. Being able to handle that is going to be more challenging than anybody realizes. We just don't have the ability to be that flexible anymore. So that needs to be looked at, and we need to take a strong look at 2012, because if there's not going to be an increase in revenue, then we need to reduce some now. If we were to reduce our expenditures by another $2.5 million, $2.7 million or so, that money would have to be set aside, and then it would be used to go into 2012. That doesn't alleviate the problem. It just moves it to 2013. And there's some thinking that maybe the economy will recover by then. I don't know.
Well, we'll have casino money by then, right?
Yeah.
Well, we were supposed to have lottery money that was supposed to fix the schools, and we see what happened with that.
We always have that potential sale of real estate
We
that
do.
I'm hoping and counting on.
Well, we do, but what we would be doing is taking additional reductions now to stretch out the resources. About 2.5 to 3, I would say 2.5 million reduction going into 2010 if the money was set aside properly, will allow us to go into 2012 at what we do beginning January of 2011. We're mindful that we have some trailing costs that we're not going to generate as much savings as quickly. And that's going to have to be looked at the end of the year. I'm not guaranteeing that if you did those cuts now, there wouldn't be any additional changes that may be necessary going into 2012. But it appears that strategy could be an additional plan if revenue isn't increased. I think we need to do that. I think we need to prepare for that. That's Plan B. It's almost a no-choice plan if we don't get additional revenue. To wait until 2012 to address the issues we know are staring us in the face, I think is not the best practice for us to adopt. I don't have good news. I apologize. I really wish I could find you a revenue stream and all would be well. But you either generate revenue or you start reducing now for what we know is going to happen. The only positive result of reducing now to balance for 2012 would be mid-year we did get a lot of cuts from the state, and the revenue that they are supposed to return to us, I'm not going to say give us, they're supposed to return to us, we would at least have done this for 2012, and we'll be able to float that boat for a little while and then figure out what we're going to do again going forward from that point, because we'll have some cash set aside. Recognize I'm also worried about the state's returning of indigent defense fees. We finally got them back up to a more responsible level, but yet a significantly reduced level of what the state promised us they would reimburse. The bill they owe us is in the millions, and then when they look in the balance of their budget, I anticipate them dropping that way down again, if not completely eliminating it and putting it on the back of local government, and we're talking about another couple $1 million. Betty, you're smiling.
On board, okay?
She's glad she's not going to be here for 2012.
No, I mean, you continue to talk. You're saying the same things that you said over and over again. I've asked you to submit it in writing. Okay?
Let's do your report, Commissioner.
I'm done.
Okay. Well, other than working on budget this week, two really nice events. First, congratulations to Michael D'Andrea and his partner Neil, a young man from Avon Lake who played football for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He's moved his family back up here, opened a very nice business, Track 3D in Avon Lake, attended a fundraiser there the other night, and he brought a lot of big hitters in. Brett Saberhagen, former two-time Cy Young Award winner, Greg Zahn, former pitcher for the Yankees, a fundraiser for two different benefits, one to benefit a traveling baseball team, the other for MS. So they did a very nice job, so I see them relocating. Chris Haas from All Pro Freight has leased them a very reasonable facility. So it's nice to see our young people educated are coming back home. So, And then last night, one of the biggest events of the year in Lorain County, Erie, and Huron, I had the opportunity to present at the Golden 30 Awards, where the Growth Partnership is one of the sponsors. Congratulations to John Beckett from R.W. Beckett. He was recognized as the Dick Dessage Entrepreneur of the Year. He had a great story, great speech, very inspirational. Had an opportunity to speak to him afterwards. And then congratulations to the emerging company. Jeff Sudbrook from the Morning Journal, the publisher, presented to Synapse Biomedical. It wasn't a real good video to watch because it had all these working parts and where they stuck things in you so you could breathe and not use ventilators. Great company here in Lorain County, emerging. And then to the established business, a friend of mine, Judy Recknagel, the Mermaid's Tail in Amherst, her and her staff, as the top #1 ranked established business in a Tri-County area. So congratulations to both of those.
Your assistant Tony is wearing an absolutely beautiful bracelet from there.
Yeah. My wife, my daughters, they all have them. They like to shop in that store. So
Very nice.
Thank you,
I'm
Commissioner.
gonna have to go in there now. Show it. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? I love that.
Ooh.
Very nice.
Well, while you were at the 30s last night, I was at the Cavs.
you helped them out in that third quarter they had?
Oh, it was fantastic. And I thought, well, and Firelands, and I don't know if there's any other Firelands school except the one in Lorain County, so I'm going to say it was ours. They sang the national anthem. It was a wonderful group there. And I was blending in the crowd, right? I went to get something to eat. And the guy working the counter said, "Hello, Commissioner Blair."
Can't go anywhere.
Well, yeah, but it was neat because he was one of the former NOACA board members that I served with from Parma, Tom Weinrich. So it was really nice to see him. So that was my fun thing. And then I know that you are not interested, Commissioner Lori, but I'm going to bore you anyway. Yesterday,
What, you going to talk about rail?
Yes, ma'am. Yesterday, the technical committee from the West Shore Corridor Transportation Committee met here in our nicely
Lit.
appointed room so that everybody could see what was going on. And they developed a short list of 5 routes to study. Sandusky to the Lakefront Station for rail, Sandusky to Tower City for rail, Sandusky to West Boulevard for rail, Sandusky to Public Square for bus, and Sandusky to Westlake Park and Ride for bus. And then they're going to look at 2 other things: the higher than transit fare, and there's 2. They have to do it on distance based. 2 other technicalities, which they will come back and report on. And the next meeting, and this is interesting, we're having public hearings on a proposed sales tax increase on December 8th at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m., and this technical committee is going to meet at 3 p.m. that day. So I think we might be hearing from some of the people on that technical committee too, and I think that'd be great. They have some resource materials here if anybody is interested in looking at them. It shows how they arrived at the various listings. So, here for your viewing pleasure. That's it for me.
Okay, next week is our last of our budget hearings. Actually, 10 o'clock is going to be Mark Stewart from the auditors, 10:15 coroner, 10:30 treasurer, 10:45 board of revisions, 11 o'clock recorder, and 1 o'clock is our investment advisory meeting. Board correspondence?
Move the reading be waived.
Second.
Discussion? Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Public comment?
Anybody wants to speak? Mr. Hamilton? Come on down, and Mr. McConnell, either one, and or both. We have a young gentleman, must be following you today.
Shadow Day?
4-H day.
Yes, 4-H Day.
No, 4-H is,
Yes, it is.
Yes.
where are our people?
We didn't get any.
They didn't want to be bored with you.
Wow.
Where are you working next week? I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was 4-H Day.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Top of the agenda.
Good morning, Commissioners and
Good
members of the
morning.
board. Today, as you know, today is 4-H Youth Government Day, and today we have Mr. Philip Bigler with us today. He is interested in computer engineering, and for 4-H he shows cows, goats, and pigs, and he also plays snare drum in the marching band.
Ooh.
So we're excited to have him on board today. We're going to show him as much as we can show him, everything from the road work to the garage as we get ready for snow removal, and everything that we do in the drafting office and in the offices in general. So, Philip, is there anything you would like to say to the board?
I want you to tell me where you go to school, Philip.
Columbia.
Columbia, all right. Anything else you want to tell us?
I actually shadowed you last year.
I thought you looked familiar.
Her memory's starting to go, Philip.
They are so mean to me, Philip. Did you enjoy yourself last year?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Make sure those engineers treat you good. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you.
Hamilton. All right, Mr. McConnell.
Well, I guess it's still morning. As most of you know, Pittsfield Township trustee. I'm also the drainage representative for the county association. And in regards to what is affectionately be called your rain tax, the fee for issue 2 improvements, there's been obviously there's some disappointment in the fact that a considerable amount of money is being used for package plant improvements, as we understand. But I'm not here really about that. What I would like to suggest, since these funds are being procured from the unincorporated area, that I've been made aware of a new engineering, it's a different ditch design. Instead of your typical V ditch, you have the small flow line. Say you have a 4-foot deep ditch. You would engineer the ditch to where you had like a 2-foot V ditch, and then you would excavate dirt out to make a wider, flatter, basically an artificial floodplain. It would be grassed. It would accomplish that whenever the flow of a ditch under a heavy event would speed up, which is basically when you start moving sediment, it would spread out, it would go through a grassy area, it would slow down, it would be filtered. And to summarize, I'd like to suggest that, and I had a minute conversation with Ken, and he said that to meet issue or phase 2 standards, there's a study where they were talking about possibly 16 retention basins around the county. That's going to require land procurement, extensive excavation, and maintenance. I am suggesting that our ditch program be reinstated through Soil and Water. They have the expertise to, and these ditches would be engineered to the new criteria to where they would accomplish the erosion control and sediment control, and yet we'd be improving the drainage in the area that's actually paying the bill. So there's going to be a presentation made at the county meeting tonight. Farm Bureau, I think, is going to be on board with this. If there's any additional contacts that need to be made, or a national conservation, it's being done in Minnesota, Indiana. It's being done all across the Midwest now. It's kind of a new technique, but proven, and I think it'd be a much better use of money than some retention basins / mosquito pits that would be spread around the county.
Sounds fascinating. The only thing we're lacking is money.
Well, we're generating the funds with that parcel tax
Yes.
fee.
I think
Excuse
that
me.
those monies, and someone else can speak to that, I think they're committed for a period of time. I was thinking in respect to the program that the commissioners had committed several hundred, well, maybe even $1 million for a period of time that the Soil and Water took care of. But we
Exactly.
haven't given them any money for several years now to do the ditching, which I was fully in support of. Mr. Cordes, do you know how many years those funds are committed that we're collecting now?
We haven't started collecting them. We don't start
Rosa.
collecting them until 2011.
January is the first time we start collecting.
But they're already committed, was my
Correct.
question.
To debt service.
Once we finish up program implementation and we finish the construction, we'll begin debt service on a low-interest loan. Let's clarify here for a few seconds. There was a ability to get a 1.8 million, I believe it was, stimulus fund money that was at no cost to the community, and to match that with a $1.8 million significantly reduced interest loan to be able to work out some of the issues that were required of the community. So that debt service begins in July.
And that was to reline sewers in the township areas.
The first portion.
Right.
The first portion. So once the dust settles and we see what the revenue is compared to what our expenses are, and we have some money advanced into the project, it always takes money to get something going before money comes in. We'll have a more accurate picture of the availability of certain funds to be able to do other projects, Jim. Doug. Sorry, Doug.
Possibly Ken can correct me, but I'm pretty sure that the information, the printed information that was available at the airport meeting implied that there was going to be like $360,000 of the potential $600,000 that were going to be collected that was going to go towards debt service. Then that still leaves $240,000 or something to start some projects with.
Right, as I indicated, once we get all the program implementation costs and we see what the revenue is going to come in, and because we only have projections right now, and once that's all qualified in the first quarter of next year, we'll be able to get a better understanding of what monies are available to begin to do projects. I'm agreeing with you, actually. But right now, there's still some issues that need to be resolved. That's getting those projects done and looking at the revenue stream once it starts coming in next year.
Well, my point is not necessarily so much what has to happen next year. Is if the individual landowners in the unincorporated areas are paying this fee, it's a little bit of a rub that it's going towards your packaging plants that are servicing a serious minority as far as the number of payees. But if the ditch program, by volunteering the people that want to be served by the ditch program are the ones that are going to end up receiving some of that money. And the other thing about the ditch program is once it's done forever because it's on maintenance. It's paid for by the individuals that use it. And, it's a one and done project. It doesn't have to have Tracos come in and clean it out every 3 years or whatever it amounts to. I mean, it sounds a little bit, your retention basins are going to be a continuous maintenance item, and they're not going to be on your maintenance program as a ditch would be.
Well, Doug, not to interrupt you though, so I can just jump in here. A lot of this part, the first part was the I&I, the infiltration of all the additional water flow into the sanitary. We have to stop that first. Then we can work where all the stormwater runoff is coming to, because it starts in the south and moves forward on our watersheds. And that was the basis of the report from 97 or 98 with the 14 or 16 retention areas.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's got to be started from probably the north end and going back, and then hopefully the cities, because the cities are working on one also. They've been through the PSI process and they've been in communications with us. They'd like to partner up with us once we get ours up and running, because right now it's all based on projections. We don't have anything in exactly what we're gonna receive. They'd like to partner up with us with everything going north, so the water can end up going and not in people's basements or flooding. We've sat through many ditch hearings here in our 6 years. I know more about ditches now than I ever planned on in my life.
Than you ever cared to know.
But, you know, you're saying those ditches and going through the petition process and those people who want to and those who don't when we've been through that process to get something accomplished. I think we're probably a year out from actually establishing a game plan on where we're going to go to next. We have to get this first phase done, collection of dollars, and then not to ignore your recommendation, but I think you're about 12 months ahead of the game on that. And I know representing the township residents in Pittsfield, you're supposed to be, but we're probably that far out. So to commit now would just be, it wouldn't make any sense for us to make a solid commitment, not knowing what the revenues are gonna be and the final cost on the project.
That's very understandable, but I guess what we're requesting is a seat at the table because we think we have a very viable idea as to how to accomplish not only the sediment control, but also deal with what probably many people consider the #1 problem in the county, and that's drainage. I mean, water goes someplace, and it goes from the south to the north. And the other engineering benefit that this type of ditch construction would be is it wouldn't have to be that for the entire length. I mean, you know, water can speed up, but it also can slow back down, you know, so if there was a water course that came from a township into a municipality and then exited out the other side, well, most likely there's not going to be any room to do anything inside the municipality. But if you slowed it down before it got there, you slowed it down after it left there, you know, with your partnership, you know, you're going to accomplish what you need to accomplish. But yeah, I may be 12 months ahead, but we want a seat at the table, and we think we have a very viable engineering solution to meeting your phase 2 or what, you know, your sediment control requirements.
Sounds interesting.
NPDES.
Sounds very good
Yeah,
to
it sounds
me.
good, and it sounds like you really didn't have much conversation with the engineer, with Mr. Carney. Maybe you just need some time to sit down and talk to him about it and
Well, that's
weigh
true.
out the pros and the
We spoke
cons.
for about 5 seconds back there, and but yeah, I think it's a much more economical, viable solution to controlling sediment that apparently is the bottom line eventually. So
Right.
Thanks for sharing. Make sure you give him what information you have, and
Will do.
soil and water as well,
yes,
what there's left of it.
yeah. Well, I've contacted Soil and Water. I'm due their Tuesday evening meeting, so we're going to be discussing it then.
Thank
so,
you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? I move we go into executive session for the purposes outlined by the county administrator.
Second.
Ms. Blair?
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye. I think Sherry's bored too. Her eyes are rolling. Is it done yet?